Hi, my name is Luna. 2 weeks ago, my little sister Avery told me, screamed at me. Actually, that I'd ruined her life. She said it right there in the living room, with her ring light glowing behind her like some twisted halo. And my parents, they just nodded, like she'd spoken gospel. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there, holding a chipped mug of reheated tea like it could anchor me to a moment that was already slipping away. It was supposed to be just another evening at my parents' house in the south end of Minneapolis. I'd been staying with them temporarily, a word they repeated often enough to make sure I never forgot it. The kind of temporary that comes after a layoff, a breakup, and a string of nights wondering if the problem was the world, or just you. Avery had just hit 100 followers on TikTok and was doing a live stream Q&A. She sat perched on the edge of our family's oversized white sectional like a crownless queen, spewing inspo quotes about resilience and growth while my parents clapped along like she was getting her doctorate. No one mentioned I helped her write half those quotes 2 years ago, back when she had 400 followers and no idea how hashtags worked. I stood in the kitchen, a few feet away, invisible. I could smell the garlic bread in the oven. I could hear the hum of the fridge, but I couldn't hear my name. I hadn't heard it all night. Then the Wi-Fi glitched. Just for a second. Her stream lagged, then froze. Avery's face twisted, and her voice leapt an octave. "Oh my God. Not now," she snapped, slamming the laptop closed. And then, like a knife, she turned to me. This always happens when you're around. I blinked, unsure if I heard her right. "You stress me out, Luna, just by breathing. You throw off my vibe." I waited for anyone to say something. My mom, Monica. He looked at me with the expression of someone about to wipe down a countertop. "She's not wrong," she said, brushing imaginary lint off her jeans. "Every time something good happens for your sister, something about you ruins it. Honestly, Luna, you've ruined a lot more than that." Dad, as usual, said nothing. He rubbed the bridge of his nose like all of this was a rerun. He was too tired to finish watching. The mug in my hand felt suddenly too heavy. But I didn't say a word. I just turned around, walked down the hallway to the room they never let me forget was the guest room. My breath was steady, robotic. The door stuck halfway before creaking closed behind me. That smell, old carpet, stale air freshener hit me like memory. Too familiar. I pulled out the backpack I hadn't used since my early college days. Started packing. Not clothes. Not keepsakes. Just things that wouldn't be missed. A toothbrush. My worn-out charger. The book I never finished. I didn't take the framed photo on the nightstand. Or the card I'd written my mom last Mother's Day. I already knew they'd never read it. 15 minutes later, I walked out the front door without a single word. No one followed. No one asked where I was going. No one asked if I'd be back. The night air was sharp with early spring chill. I walked past the neighbor's lawn gnome, past the intersection where I learned to ride my bike, and kept going. A gas station buzzed under fluorescent lights a few blocks down. I went in, bought a granola bar and a bottle of water, not because I was hungry, but because I needed to do something that felt normal. I asked the cashier if the bus was still running. "Last one's in 8 minutes," he said, barely looking up. He was wrong. It came 12 minutes late, but I waited. I sat on the cold metal bench, backpack between my legs, hands in my coat pockets like a child waiting for someone to claim her. The ride into downtown felt endless. even though I'd done it hundreds of times before. I didn't look back through the window. By the time the bus dropped me off, the streets were empty. I walked 3 blocks to a beige building with flickering neon signage, Midtown Budget Inn. The kind of place with a buzzer instead of a bell and a front desk guy who didn't ask questions. Cash or card, he muttered, eyes glued to the reality show behind him. I gave him my last $43. The room smelled like bleach and old cigarettes. The bed creaked when I sat down. I didn't cry. I didn't undress. I didn't even look in the mirror. I just stared at the cracked ceiling tile until it blurred into a shape I couldn't name. Later, I would say that was the night I disappeared. But maybe it was the night I finally became visible. Visible to myself. I woke up before the sun the next morning. Not because I wanted to, but because the radiator in the motel let out a screeching groan every few minutes like it was mourning its own existence. I blinked at the ceiling. Sama cracked-il. Same yellowed smoke stains. But this time, my body didn't feel like it belonged in that bed. It just occupied space. I reached for my phone out of habit. No texts. No missed calls. Nothing. The silence wasn't surprising, it was just a louder version of what I'd already lived through. I sat up and rubbed the sleep from my face, only to realize I hadn't really slept. My backpack lay open on the floor, half-zipped. Like, even it wasn't sure if I was staying or just passing through. I walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. Outside, the sky was just starting to blush with pink. The way Minneapolis does in early spring when the snow hasn't completely made up its mind about staying or going. I counted what I had left, $227 in cash. A few coins jingling at the bottom of my bag. And a prepaid phone with a battery that died faster than hope. No job. No plan. No home. But something about the emptiness didn't feel like the end in a 1/7 Tallinger Enna's Luder Topkommas. It felt like space. Space to start. I threw on my coat faded denim with a rip at the elbow I'd never bothered to stitch and walked toward downtown. My boots thudded on the sidewalk, echoing louder than the early traffic. A billboard above a closed furniture store read, "Family is everything." I nearly laughed out loud. 3 blocks later, I spotted a little cafe with hand-drawn signs taped to the inside of the window, free Wi-Fi. Refills all day. Warmth inside. It felt like an invitation from the universe. Or maybe just from someone who once understood what it meant to be tired and broke. I walked in. The bell above the door jingled like it was trying too hard. Inside smelled like burnt toast, espresso, and bleach. The barista didn't look up when I walked in. She was too busy scrolling through her phone behind the counter. "Small coffee, please," I said, voice soft from disuse. She rang me up without looking. "That'll be $1. 75. I handed over crumpled bills and took the coffee to the table closest to the outlet. The warmth of the cup hit my palms like sunlight. For the first time in days, I breathed not shallow, not automatic. A full breath. I pulled out my phone and opened an old folder I hadn't touched in years. It held bookmarks for tutoring platforms I once dreamed of using, back when I still thought I could be something without someone else's approval. I clicked into one of them. Surprisingly, I already had a profile. I'd made it back when I was still in college. Probably during one of those midnight fits of ambition. It needed an update. I changed the headline to SAT, ACT tutor, patient. Reliable. Here to help. Under about me. I typed "I believe in showing up," even when no one else does. I hit publish. Then I started applying 1 family, 2 families, 5, 16. Each one had the same core message: my kid's falling behind. We don't know what else to try. Can someone help? And for the first time in a long time, I thought, maybe I can. Midway through my 5th application, I paused. A memory washed over me like someone whispering underwater. You're the one who listens. Grandma used to say, everyone else talks over each other. But you see people. I remembered how I'd sit at her feet during Sunday dinners, tuning out the chaos while she quietly braided my hair, talking to me about stars, time, and kindness. I hadn't thought about that in years. I swallowed hard. At her funeral, someone, maybe a distant cousin or a church friend, had leaned in and said, her second letter was so moving. I hope it brought you comfort. I'd blinked. Second letter, oh. Maybe I was mistaken. They backpedaled. I'm sure she sent it. She said she did. Months before she passed. But I never got it. 3 days later, I asked Mom about it. I remember how casually she'd answered, not even glancing up from her phone. Oh, that. Just some sweet old lady stuff. Nothing important. I should have screamed. I should have demanded it. But I didn't. I just nodded. As if that made sense. As if erasing me was just another part of how our family functioned. Back in the cafe, I stared at the screen for a long moment before resuming my applications. One notification came in, then another. By the time I left the cafe, I had 3 students lined up for intro sessions. The walk back to the motel was still cold, but it felt different. Not warmer, but somehow clearer. The next few days fell into a rhythm. I'd wake up before dawn in that little motel room with the flickering light above the bathroom mirror, pack my backpack like it was a ritual, and head back to the cafe on Maple and Pine. It became my headquarters, my workspace, my sanctuary. The baristas started to recognize me. One of them, Jordan, with the green beanie and too many bracelets, started setting out a ceramic mug for me by 7 a.m. Even if I still paid for the refillable paper cup, I think he saw it as some small act of kindness. Or maybe he just knew I wasn't going anywhere. I booked tutoring sessions in 2-hour slots. Using the free Chromebooks at the Hennepin Public Library down the block, I treated every lesson like it was a keynote speech, even if it was just explaining right triangles or how to write a thesis statement that didn't start with, "In this essay, I will..." And the kids, they listened. They asked questions. They stayed past the end of our sessions to show me the grades they were too shy to share with their own parents. One girl, Riley, was a sophomore who hated math but wanted to apply to pre-med just to prove she could. During our second lesson, she looked at me through her camera and said, "You explain things in a way that makes sense. No one's ever done that." I nodded, trying not to let the emotion leak into my voice. "It's because I see you." She blinked, then smiled like she wasn't used to hearing that. I wasn't used to saying it either. After that call, I sat in the library's atrium, back pressed against a cold metal column. I pulled out the receipt from the motel, flipped it over, and started writing. Not a journal entry. Not a breakdown. Just math. How much I made. How much rent cost. How many nights I could afford if I didn't eat lunch every day. 2 more. Maybe 3. But it was more than 0. And that, somehow, felt like a beginning. That night, I walked back to my room with a granola bar and a secondhand pride rising in my chest. I unlocked the door, sat on the creaky bed, and turned on the lamp that buzzed like an old fly. I looked around that motel room, the cheap plastic curtains, the dented mini fridge, the Bible in the drawer next to a missing television remote, and said out loud to no one, they never noticed what I was building. And it was true. My family never asked. Never checked in. Never said, "What are you working on these days?" Because in their eyes, if it didn't sparkle or go viral, it wasn't worth acknowledging. But what I was building this small, honest thing was mine. I took out my old laptop, held together with duct tape and hope, and opened a folder labeled Old Projects. Deep inside it was a file I hadn't touched in years. Curriculum Concepts, version 1. It was full of outlines, lesson templates, early study guides, all things I had created during the years when I dreamed of opening a prep center someday. A prep center built for kids like Riley. Kids like me. Back then, I'd called it Harper Learning Studio. I remembered the logo I made in Canva, late one night, a pencil wrapped in vines, growing from cracked cement. I reopened the file, scrolled through pages of notes, feedback drafts, color-coded graphs. My chest tightened. I had forgotten how much I had created. How much of myself I'd once poured into something with no guarantee of recognition. I closed the folder and opened another one I hadn't looked at since Grandma passed. Inside, a file labeled Legal Grandma. I don't remember scanning it, but there it was. A digital copy of her will. I clicked. The font was small, the language cold and formal, but buried near the end, in section 14C, was a single sentence that stopped me. All educational materials, curriculum frameworks, and intellectual property co-developed with or solely created by Luna Harper are to remain under her exclusive legal ownership, as witnessed and notarized below. Her signature, the notary stamp, the date, all of it. My breath caught in my throat. She knew. She'd seen what I was building long before I saw it myself. And she'd protected it. Protected me. A sound pinged from my phone, a notification I nearly ignored. It was from Avery. Not a message. Not a call. A post. She'd uploaded a picture of herself and Mom, holding champagne glasses, captioned with a quote, "Family is who shows up when it matters." 2 number, gratitude number, my tribe. I stared at it blankly. Behind them, hanging on the wall, was the new family portrait. Same hallway, same lighting, same wall where our old family photo used to be. Only now, I wasn't in it. I zoomed in. Mom. Avery. Dad, even the dog they got after I moved out. All there. But me gone. Like I never existed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But in the quiet of that motel room, I felt something shift, something deep and final. Like watching someone throw away a letter without even opening it, knowing full well it had your name on it. It was a Thursday afternoon when Chloe texted me, "Check out Avery's new site. I think you need to see this." I was sitting in my usual corner at Maple and Pine, sipping my second refill of burnt coffee, eyes bleary from back-to-back tutoring sessions. I clicked the link without thinking, expecting another one of Avery's polished selfies or maybe a sponsored post for skincare. But it wasn't that. It was something else. Avery Harper Success.com, her brand new online prep course. I scrolled past the glossy photos, the gold and white layout, the fake testimonials written in a language I knew too well. Then I stopped. My heart skipped like a scratched record. There, it was my content, my curriculum, my diagnostic tools, my exact structure and rubrics, lifted word for word. Even the sidebar headers were mine. Even the font choices. Even the growth tracker chart I'd created 2 years ago during a quiet night in grad school, alone with a notebook and a dream. I felt the air leave my lungs. I wasn't just erased. I was stolen from. I minimized the window. Mi fingers trembling. I pulled out the motel receipt from my bag, flipped it to the back, and wrote 3 words in black pen. She took everything. It wasn't just the content. It was the story behind it. The hours I spent editing templates, testing lesson formats, adjusting slides based on real student feedback. It was years of invisible work, taken by someone who had never asked how I was doing, but suddenly wanted what I had built in the dark. The worst part, I wasn't surprised. Avery always took what she wanted and made it shinier. My playlists in high school became hers. My denim jacket from undergrad suddenly borrowed forever. Even my phrases, "give yourself permission to grow," she used them now like they came from her soul. Not mine. I closed the laptop slowly, like it might explode if I moved too fast. A few hours later, I heard a knock on my motel door. I peeked through the curtain. Chloe. She looked older. Or maybe just tired in the kind of way that doesn't show up in mirrors, but lives in your posture. She held something wrapped in a dish towel small, rectangular. Familiar? Hey, she said softly. I found this. She stepped inside and unwrapped the bundle. It was a letter. My handwriting. My own return address on the envelope. Unopened. Still sealed. I saw it in your mom's kitchen drawer. Chloe said, under expired coupons and a bottle of Tylenol. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I took the envelope like it was made of glass. The memory hit me instantly, writing that letter on Mom's birthday, saving up just enough to buy a gift card to her favorite cafe. Folding the note with shaking hands, I remembered the words, "If there's still a place for me in your heart, I'd like to sit there again." She never opened it. She never even threw it out. She just buried it. Like I never mailed it at all. I opened the letter now, carefully. The paper was soft pink, creased but intact. My words looked so small now, like they'd been written by someone else, someone hopeful. Chloe watched me, then slid a few printed pages across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Avery's draft site. I helped her set it up months ago. I remember, before things went weird. I didn't know she was using your stuff until I saw this." I scanned the papers, side-by-side comparisons. My slides, her branding. Same structure, same content, same timeline. She told the agency you gave it to her. Chloe added quickly, "that you were unstable. And you didn't want credit?" I laughed. A short, sharp sound that barely made it past my lips. Even my voice, my teaching voice. My structure. My soul's work had been recast as a handout. And now I was unstable. A footnote in someone else's spotlight. Chloe sat quietly while I reread every line. I felt numb. Not surprised. Not angry. Just hollow. When she left, she hugged me like she was afraid I'd break. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You didn't deserve any of this." The door clicked shut behind her. The room was still again, just me. The fridge humming. And the truth layered across the table like evidence in a trial. I opened my laptop and pulled up the file again. Grandma Legal, 2017. Her will. Her words. Her protection. My name. My ownership. My legacy. They thought I was quiet because I had nothing to say. But I was quiet because I had everything to prove. And I was done being erased. I didn't sleep that night. The motel room buzzed with its usual sounds, the whir of the vending machine outside, the low rumble of trucks on the freeway, the occasional thump from the room above me, but none of it mattered. The only sound I could hear was my own heartbeat. It echoed with 3 words. They knew everything. My sister knew the content was mine. My mom knew the letter existed. They didn't deny it. They just discarded it. Silently. Neatly. Like I was a receipt they didn't need anymore. I sat on the floor with my back against the dresser. The unopened envelope from my birthday still sitting on the table. I had read it 3 times now. Each time hoping it would feel less pathetic. But it didn't. It still read, "If there's still a space in your heart for me, I'd like to sit there again. Not asking for everything. Just a call back. I miss our Tuesday talks. I miss you. Love. Luna." It wasn't just a letter. It was a soft reach across a canyon, and it had been left buried under expired coupons. That stung more than any harsh word ever could. I pulled out the printed pages Chloe had given me Avery's stolen curriculum. Still warm from the library printer. It was surreal. Seeing my work living under her name, branded with gold, cursive, and lifestyle quotes. And then I saw it. At the bottom of one page, a forwarded email to a podcast producer. Avery's name. Her headshot, and one line. Buried at the end like a final twist of the knife, Luna's not involved. She's emotionally unstable and has a history of lashing out. I've spent years rebuilding the family image, please don't include her. My throat tightened. Unstable. A threat. Not worth including. All because I was quiet. All because I didn't play the game. My fingers clenched around the paper. I took a pushpin from the motel's desk drawer, the kind they used to leave for guests to tack up do not disturb signs, and I pinned the email to the wall. Then I reached into my backpack and pulled out Grandma's will. Still folded neatly in its protective sleeve. I pinned that next to it. On one side, a lie. Typed and polished. Meant to erase me. On the other, a legal truth. Handwritten and notarized. Meant to protect me. 2 sides of the same family. 2 sides of the same silence. I grabbed a pen and motel stationery, the kind with the motel logo embossed in faded gold, and started writing. Not poetry. Not revenge. A timeline. A map of what they'd taken. When it started. The jokes when I was 10. The cropped photos at 13, a son of daddily, sit in a sit of daddily. The guest room at 26. The stolen work at 28. And now, the lies wrapped in branding deals? It didn't feel petty. It felt necessary. Because naming something is the first step to not being afraid of it anymore. The next morning, I took the timeline, folded it carefully, and tucked it into my laptop sleeve. As I stepped outside, the spring air was still bitter. But I didn't feel it. I walked down to the library and booked a new Chromebook. I opened my tutoring platform and saw a message blinking. Hi Luna, we loved your profile. We'd love to bring you on board for group SAT sessions. $75 per Street Udent. Flexible hours. Let us know if you're interested. My hand hovered over the trackpad. I clicked accept. No celebration. No tears. Just quiet satisfaction. The kind that doesn't need confetti. The kind that knows it belongs there. I walked back to the motel with a different kind of weight in my chest. I wasn't a guest anymore. I was rebuilding. By Friday, I had enough to pay for a week at a shared apartment a few miles north, a small room, 2nd floor. Squeaky bit. But my name on the lease, it wasn't a palace, but it was mine. I packed my things carefully this time. Folded my clothes. Unplugged my charger. Took the pin timeline off the wall and slid it into a folder. But I left something behind. On the motel desk, I placed the envelope, the letter to my mother, and wrote on a sticky note, in case she ever wonders, I didn't leave it out of hope. I left it because I didn't need it anymore. Later that evening, as I sat on the floor of my new room with the hum of the city outside my window, I realized something. They never thought I could build anything. Not without them. Not in silence. But I had, and I wasn't done. The new apartment smelled like fresh paint and old radiators. It had one window that faced a brick wall and a closet that could barely fit 2 hangers. The floors creaked like they were warning you not to get too comfortable. And yet, it was the first place in years that felt like mine. Not borrowed. Not temporary. Mine. I slept on a twin mattress on the floor. No bed frame. No dresser. No kitchen table. Just a folding chair. A thrifted desk. And a determination louder than the traffic outside my window. Every morning, I lit a candle lavender. $3 from a clearance bin, and said the same words to myself out loud. You are not invisible anymore. It felt strange at first. Like pretending. But I kept saying it, until it didn't feel like pretending anymore. Work started coming in slowly. First, it was one-on-one tutoring. Then, a small group of high schoolers from Queens who needed help writing college essays. Their parents found me on a referral platform and, after one Zoom call, sent me 5 new students. I didn't advertise. I didn't promote. I just showed up. Session after session. And gave them everything I had. My voice. My ideas. My attention. All the things I had once begged my family to notice. Word started spreading. Not viral. Not flashy. But steadily. Organically. Like roots growing underground before anyone sees the bloom. One Saturday afternoon, as I sat editing a scholarship workshop outline, I received a DM from an old friend I hadn't heard from in years. Hey Luna, is this you? Someone just forwarded me a course site that feels really familiar. I clicked the link, and there it was again, Avery's site. Now repackaged into a premium bundle. $499 for the Harper Framework for Academic Transformation. I scrolled. She had added video modules now. One of them even started with her saying, "Here's what I teach my students about rewriting their narratives." I knew that sentence because I had written it, word for word, in a blog post from 4 years ago. My fingers froze over the keyboard. It wasn't just theft anymore. It was branding. She was building an empire from bricks I had laid down in silence. And the world was clapping for her? Unaware of the blueprint beneath it all. I took a breath. Not anger. Not panik. Just resolve. I opened my desktop folder, labeled Harper Originals, the one I used to hide behind layers of shame. Inside were outlines. Block drafts. Student testimonials. And a full framework I had once pitched to a small nonprofit years ago. They had said no at the time. Said it lacked marketing shine. But now it had scars. Now it had story. That night, I stayed up building my own website. Not perfect. Not polished. But real. I called it Learning with Luna, not catchy. But honest, I wrote my bio in one take. I'm not here to be an influencer. I'm here to help you think. If you want shiny, go somewhere else. If you want depth, pull up a chair. The next morning, I published it. No fanfare. No launch party. Just me. Alone in my apartment. Whispering. Let's see who shows up. Within a week, I had my first official inquiry through the contact form. A teacher from Chicago who had seen one of my free downloads said, "I don't know why, but your tone just feels true." That one sentence hit harder than all the praise I'd ever chased from people who never saw me. 2 weeks later, a podcaster messaged me. Saw your post on educational equity. Would you like to be a guest on our show? It's small, but our listeners are loyal. I hesitated. Part of me thought they'll laugh. They'll compare you to her. You'll sound unsure, unrefined. But a louder voice said, do it anyway. So I said yes. And when the mic turned on, I didn't start with credentials. I didn't list degrees. I didn't quote stats. I just told the truth. I talked about how students aren't broken, just unheard. How silence doesn't mean ignorance, it means protection. And how sometimes the best teachers are the ones who've had to teach themselves how to survive. The host went quiet at the end, then said, softly, Luna, we need more voices like yours. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my tiny apartment. The walls still echoed with the ghosts of what was taken from me. But now, they also held the sound of my own voice. Clear. Steady. Mine. The first time someone said, I heard about you from someone who worked with you, I almost cried. Not because it was some big celebrity endorsement, not because it came with a check or a headline, but because it was real. It was a quiet ripple, and I had started it. Each day, I logged into my growing calendar of tutoring sessions and writing workshops. Every student that showed up had a story, a struggle, a silence that needed translating, and slowly, I became the one they trusted to help them do it. There was Javier, a high school senior from El Paso who had never written a personal statement before. His first draft was 2 paragraphs about sports and GPA numbers. But when we finally dug into the real stuff, his mom working 2 jobs, his fear of being seen as just another kid from the border, his writing cracked open like sunlight through a dusty attic. Then there was Mia, a single mom in her deretics, trying to finish her degree online. She booked 1 session, saying, I just need help organizing my thoughts. She stayed for 10 more, each one a tiny victory against the voice in her head telling her she wasn't smart enough. I started documenting these stories not to show off, but to remember, because for so long, I had been erased. Now, I wanted to archive the proof that I was here, that I mattered. One night, after a particularly emotional Zoom call with a student who had been told by 3 counselors to just be realistic about community college, I sat down and opened a blank blog post. I titled it, You're Not Too Much. You're just unclaimed. I wrote from the gut. No outline. No filters. No branding talk. I told the story of how people can love your voice in private and dismiss it in public. How they can praise your ideas but forget your name. And how the real magic comes when you stop begging to be chosen and choose yourself instead. I hit publish at 1:47 a.m. By morning, it had 237 shares. By the end of the week, over 3. Ling. Not viral, but visceral. The comments raw. Vulnerable. People saying, this is the first time I felt understood. Others saying, I read this out loud to my daughter. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about reclaiming work. This was about reclaiming worth. The invitations started coming. A small women's empowerment conference in Denver, a teacher training workshop in Milwaukee, an online summit hosted by a nonprofit that focused on first-generation college students. None of them huge, none of them glamorous, but every single one of them aligned. They didn't ask for perfection. They asked for presence. At the Denver conference, after my keynote titled, The Power of Unpolished Voices, a woman came up to me with tears in her eyes. She was in her 50s. wore a hand-stitched scarf, held my hand for a long time before speaking. She said, "My daughter used to follow your sister online. She thought she had to become that to succeed. But then she found your blog. Now she's applying to teach abroad. She calls you her compass." I was stunned. Not because I wanted the credit, but because I never imagined my scars could be someone else's starting point. And just like that, I felt it. I was no longer reacting to their version of me. I was writing my own. One afternoon, I received an email with a subject line that stopped me cold. "We'd like to feature you in our Educators Who Inspire series." It was from an independent podcast with a strong national following. I'd listened to their episodes for years. I said yes. During the recording, the host asked, "How did you build your platform without selling out?" I laughed. Not the polite kind. The kind that comes from surviving something absurd? I said, "I built it in a motel room. After realizing the people closest to me weren't going to hand me the mic. So I built my own stage. It wasn't pretty, but it held." He was quiet for a beat, then said, "That might be the most honest thing we've ever aired." When the episode went live, my inbox overflowed. Not with sponsorships, but with stories. People writing in from Detroit, from Boise, from tiny towns in Montana. They weren't just saying, "Thanks." They were saying, "I started because you made it okay to start ugly." And in all of it, I finally understood something Grandma had once told me, but I hadn't fully absorbed until now. Your legacy isn't the loudest thing you leave behind. It's the quiet shift people feel after they've met you. And I was beginning to feel it. Not just in my students, but in me. It was a Tuesday morning when I saw her name in my inbox. Subject line: "Family Reunion. Hope you'll join us." The sender: Avery. I stared at it for a long time. Not reading. Not breathing. Just staring. I hadn't heard from her in almost 2 years. Not since she'd taken my curriculum, rebranded it, and then written me off to a podcast producer as unstable and emotionally difficult. Not since Mom buried my birthday letter beneath a stack of mail. Not since I walked away. And now here it was. An invitation simple. Almost polite. Like none of that had happened. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a flyer attached with pastel fonts and the words, "Celebrating Family." Food, forgiveness. I wanted to laugh. Forgiveness. It was always their favorite word when they were the ones caught. A band-aid over bullet holes. Still. I clicked open the attachment. The reunion was scheduled for a park in Portland. Picnic tables. Catered food. Speeches. The kind of thing that looked wholesome in photos and felt hollow in real life. I closed my laptop, and for a week, I told myself, "Don't go. You're past this. You've built your life. You don't need their crumbs." But something kept pulling me back. Not out of hope. Not out of curiosity. But out of completion. Not for them. For me. So, that Saturday morning, I packed a small overnight bag, booked a last-minute flight, and flew back to the city I had once run from. I arrived at the park wearing jeans, a plain navy sweater, and the same boots I wore when I walked out of Grandma's house the day of her funeral. Poetic maybe. Intentional. Absolutely. The park was buzzing with laughter. Folding chairs. Disposable cameras. And old photo albums. Someone was handing out lemonade in mason jars. And there she was, Avery. Still glowing. Still curated. She saw me before I saw her. And in that split second, I read it in her face. Surprise. Nervousness. Maybe even guilt? She came over. Arms open. smiling too wide. "Luna, you came." I stood still. "Yeah." I said. "I did." She motioned toward the buffet. "We have your favorite, those little lemon squares you used to make with Grandma." That stung a little. Not because of the food. Because she remembered. And yet, she had forgotten so much else. We made small talk. The kind that feels like walking on ice that's a little too thin. Then, Mom walked over. She looked older, softer. Somehow, time had smoothed some edges. Or maybe it was just the lighting. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. My chest tightened. That word used to mean warmth. Now it just felt rehearsed. We sat down under a tree. Just the three of us. And for a moment, no one said anything. Then, Mom sighed. "We know we made mistakes. Things were complicated. We didn't handle them well. I wanted to ask which part, the stealing, the silence, the denial, but I didn't, because what I needed wasn't an apology. It was a reckoning, and it had to come from me. So I reached into my bag and pulled out a small folder. Inside were two things: a copy of the original curriculum draft with my name on the footnote, dated and signed, a printed version of the blog post I wrote, the one that had gone semi-viral. I placed them between us. "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. "And I'm not here for some dramatic confrontation. I came to return the story to its rightful narrator." Avery opened the folder and slowly read the pages. Her hands trembled slightly. Mom glanced between us. Then I said something I never expected to say. "I'm not angry anymore. But I won't be erased again. From now on, I speak for myself. You don't get to tell my story unless I say so." It was quiet, the kind of silence that feels sacred. Not awkward. Just final. After a long pause, Avery whispered, "I'm sorry." I believed her. Maybe not fully, maybe not forever. But in that moment, I believed her. Because she didn't say it for show. She said it like a wound that had just realized it was still bleeding. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat there. And that was enough. Later that evening, I left the reunion early. Walked to the edge of the park. Took one last look at the family I had tried so hard to earn and realized I didn't need to be invited back. I had arrived on my own terms. It was never about the spotlight. I wasn't the kind of person who dreamed of microphones or stages with velvet curtains. I didn't fantasize about applause or standing ovations. All I ever wanted was to be heard, really heard. But sometimes, when you speak your truth loud enough in quiet rooms, the world leans in. It started with a feature in a National Educator's Journal. A small piece titled "Luna James, the Architect of Realness in Modern Education." They had found my blog. Then my workshop series. And then my story. Not the version spun by my family. Not the headlines they once chased, but mine. The journalist who interviewed me said, "You're not just teaching students. You're teaching a generation how to reclaim their voice." I remember blinking at that. Was I, maybe? Or maybe I was just finally using mine? After the article came out, my inbox exploded. One email in particular caught my eye. It was from an event organizer for the Voices Summit, a yearly conference focused on equity, authenticity, and mental health in education. They wanted me to give a keynote. I stared at the email for a long time. Keynote. Not panelist. Not breakout facilitator. Keynote. I laughed a little, not out of disbelief, but because 2 years ago, I couldn't afford a Lyft to get to a community college job interview, and now they wanted me to open a summit for 2 Oh, oh, 0 attendees. I said yes. The days leading up to the event were a blur of nerves. Rewrites. Late-night pacing in my apartment. And voice notes to myself saying, "Speak slow. Breathe. Don't shrink." When the day arrived, I stood backstage. Heart pounding so hard, it echoed in my throat. The stage was massive. The lights were blinding. The rows of chairs felt infinite. And then the announcer said, "Please welcome Luna James." I stepped into the light, not with swagger, not with drama, but with the kind of presence you earn after surviving yourself. I opened with a line I'd never rehearsed. I used to think I had to sound like someone else to matter. But today, I speak as myself. And that's enough. The silence that followed was electric. And then applause. Warm. Human. Real. I told them about growing up in a house where silence wasn't golden, it was strategic. I told them about the motel room. The lemon squares. The ghost of a sister who smiled for cameras while stealing ideas. But I also told them about Javier. About Mia. About the students who cracked open their truths like poems. I ended with a line I had once scribbled in the margins of a notebook. Thinking no one would ever read it. You don't need a bigger voice. You just need a room that echoes back your truth. When I stepped off stage, people weren't just clapping, they were standing, not because I was famous, but because I was honest. That night, something shifted. Not in my bank account. Not in my number of followers. But inside me, I went back to my hotel room, kicked off my shoes, and opened my laptop. I had 62 new inquiries, all from people who didn't ask, "How many followers do you have?" They asked, "When can we start soon?" I was traveling across states: New Mexico, Oregon, Tennessee, speaking not just to students, but to teachers, counselors, even corporate teams who wanted to understand how to build safe spaces for voices that didn't always get airtime. But no matter how far I flew, I never forgot what grounded me. I still lit the lavender candle every morning, still whispered, "You are not invisible anymore." Still tutored Javier twice a month. Still sent Mia articles on adult education grants. Because this wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about finally being allowed to stay myself and still be enough. One night, after a webinar with over 10,000 live viewers, I received a message from someone I hadn't heard from in a long time. It was Avery. Her message was simple. "I watched your talk tonight. You were brilliant. I wish I had listened sooner. I'm proud of you." I stared at it for a while. I didn't reply. Not out of bitterness. But because some chapters don't need sequels, some just need closure. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting for her to validate me. I didn't need her to say I mattered. Because the world had echoed something far more powerful I already did. It's funny how you spend years begging to be seen, only to realize the most powerful recognition is the one you give yourself. I'm writing this now in a small sunlit studio in Asheville, North Carolina. No glam team. No filters. Just me. My laptop. A chipped mug of black coffee. And the morning breeze nudging the curtains like an old friend. There's a photo on the wall. It's not me on a stage. Not a family portrait. Just a handwritten note in a child's uneven scrawl, "Miss Luna. You made me brave enough to speak in class. Thank you." It was from a 10-year-old girl named Alina. She barely made eye contact when we first met. Whispered instead of talked. Hid behind her notebook like it was armor. But after a few weeks in my creative writing circle, she started raising her hand. Started asking questions. Started believing that her thoughts were worth sharing. That note, that's my trophy. I keep it pinned next to my grandmother's recipe card for lemon squares. Because both remind me, the smallest things carry the biggest truths. I still get asked, what was the turning point? People want a clean climax. A single moment when the fog lifted, the sun broke through, and everything changed. But life doesn't hand you a movie script. There was no single moment. There were thousands. Tiny, aching, brilliant moments stitched together by the choice to keep going. To keep speaking. Even when my voice trembled. Even when no one clapped. Even when I thought I had nothing left to say. What changed wasn't the world, it was me. I stopped auditioning for rooms that couldn't hold my fullness. Stopped shrinking to fit someone else's version of digestible Ellersend. Stopped mistaking silence for safety. And in that shift, something beautiful happened. I made space for others to rise too. My workshops turned into a nonprofit. We now mentor young writers from underfunded schools across 5 states. We don't promise fame. We promise something better, the right to tell your own story. Because when you own your narrative, you take back your name, your truth, your power. Some nights, after everyone's gone, I stay late and light a candle in the corner of our office, a little ritual. I never let go. I sit with the quiet and ask who else needs to be heard today. Sometimes the answer is a student in Iowa with a stutter. Sometimes it's a woman in Alabama who just left an abusive marriage. Sometimes it's me. Because healing isn't a finish line. It's a lifelong commitment to yourself. People ask if I ever talk to my family. The answer, sometimes, but not out of obligation. Out of peace. We're not who we once were. And I've stopped demanding a past they may never rewrite. Instead, I've written my own. One with jagged edges and breathtaking light. One that holds room for betrayal and redemption. Silence and song. Loss and legacy. I've stopped chasing happy endings. Now I live for true ones, where nothing is perfect, but everything is real. Where the girl who once sat on motel floors wondering if she mattered, now builds stages for others to stand on. And if you're still in your motel moment, still doubting, still aching, still waiting for someone to say, you can begin. Let me be that someone. Begin now. Begin ugly. Begin afraid. But begin. Because you don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You just have to be honest. And show up for yourself like your life depends on it. Because spoiler alert, it does. So, here I am. Not with a mic drop. Not with a movie deal. Just a voice. Mine. Still a little hoarse from years of swallowing pain. But strong. Unmistakably strong. And I hope wherever you are, you find your voice too. And when you do, use it. Use it even when they don't listen. Use it especially when they don't believe you. Use it until your echo becomes someone else's permission slip. Because that's how we build a new world. Not with noise, but with truth. One brave voice at a time.